Director of Marketing here at eFolder, and want to welcome everyone to the most recent episode of MSP Ignition. And we have a really exciting kind of format today. We're going to mix it up a little bit from kind of what we've done in the past and what we will still continue to do going forward. But today's topics are going to be a little bit more interactive, and we're really excited about talking to you today about the continued development, really, of this program. Just a few housekeeping notes, just as an FYI. We are recording today's session, and it will be posted on our YouTube channel for you to go back to, and we'll be sending this out via our follow-up communications to you as well. Also, everyone on the line is muted. If you've got any questions, again, we want to keep this very interactive. Please just feel free to pop those questions into the GoToWebinar question section there on your dashboard, hopefully. Along with the fact of any Q&A that you may have, we're going to have some polls that we're going to be putting up throughout the presentation and today's program. So we definitely encourage you to provide that feedback, especially as we get to a little bit later in the program. We're really going to make sure that we want to get your insights as we develop really today's topic. So before I get too much further on the housekeeping, I want to introduce the fact that I'm joined today by not just Tom Watson, who's the Director of Best Practices here at eFolder, but two additional individuals as well here on the eFolder team. Andy Benzinger, the Replicate founder, which is now part of the Data Protection Suite, which we'll touch on in just one moment, along with Garrison Strickland, who is now our Strategic Account Manager. All three, Tom, Garrison, and Andrew, have been MSP owners in the past. We've brought them into the eFolder family, and we'll be talking a little bit about that strategy as it relates to the MSP Ignition program as well. As I mentioned, this is Robert Leek, Director of Marketing, and your ringmaster for today, if you will. So one of the things that I want to touch on is just the fact that, you know, this is the fourth episode of MSP Ignition, Tom, and up to this point in November and December, we've had a lot of really interesting topics. We've provided some tools and resources to really give a feel for this program. Today's going to be a little bit different, and we're going to talk about really one of the two main avenues we're going to be pursuing through 2018 as the Ignition program continues to evolve and really get a little bit more strategic. The two avenues that we're going to be going down for the rest of this year are really revolving around a sales enablement program, which we haven't touched on yet. That'll be later this month. We'll have the first episode on sales enablement, where we'll have actually even an additional resource coming in to really focus on sales strategies and programs really targeted at MSP and SaaS providers and IT channel providers, and being able to enhance your sales format. We'll be doing that once a month through the rest of this year. But today, we're going to be talking about really, I think, the baby of this program, and that's you have plans to publish a book when this is all said and done. Can you give the audience just a little bit about the book and your strategies and kind of thoughts on where this is going to go?
Yeah, that's right, Robert. So one of the things we're doing in this MSP Ignition is I want to have kind of a continuation of the thought that takes us not just from webinars that may be about an agreement, about a calculator, which we've done already, but also something that brings it all together. And so my idea was I've read most of the books out there that are about this subject, and I feel that quite a few of them are not up to speed in terms of what it takes to do managed services now. As we've gone to more cloud, SaaS, we're getting away from sometimes like on-site hardware, or we're providing it to the clients. We're doing top to bottom, or completely like providing an entire business solution. So what I wanted to do is work with people here at eFolder with some wonderful resources. We have a number of people that have owned MSPs previously, and we have some partners that have been gracious with their time and their materials. And I'm going to work with them and people inside here, and we're going to write about an 8 to 10 chapter book over the next year. What we're going to do is each month we're going to put out a chapter of that book, and we're going to make it available to anyone who attended that webinar or signed up for the series. What we're doing to start that out, we kind of had to have a kind of a launch, and this is kind of our launch party for it. And in doing that, we're all coming together, and I invited Andy and Garrison. They've owned MSPs before, and what we're going to do is kind of hash out what's got to be in that book. And as we do it, we kind of want to hear from you also and see what you think should be in there. And we also have several interactive polls we're put up too.
That's right. And you mentioned one thing, Tom. So, you know, I think just one thing to emphasize to the audience is the fact that MSP Ignition is meant to complement really anything that they may be doing today, right? Because as we know, MSPs are very engaged with each other. There's a lot of peer groups out there. As you mentioned, there's already a lot of books. But what MSP Ignition is trying to do is bring complementary information almost up-to-date information real time, right? Because we know that these strategies, maybe have been set a few years ago before the landscape has really evolved at that point. So the point of MSP Ignition, I think, in the book that we're going to be publishing is making sure it's the most up-to-date, the most progressed, the most mature of the resources that we can get into our partners' hands. And I just want to make sure that we reemphasize that, because this is something that if you're already exploring better ways to better your business, this is just something that can complement that as you continue down that road with us and whomever else.
Yeah, I know. I'll get a little more into it when we get down to our bios, and I guess that's probably coming up in a couple slides, and I'll explain a little more about my role here.
Oh, perfect. So before we get too far into that, as I mentioned, we want your questions. We've got the surveys. We're going to touch on who we are just a little bit, both as a company and both as individuals, just to kind of set the perspective of who's here internally helping publish this book, at least a few of the resources that Tom mentioned. And then we'll be going through as I mentioned, any Q&A and topics of MSP. Just a quick heads up, really, to make sure, especially if you're new to the program, eFolder has been around for about 15 years. We kind of built our laurels, if you will, on a product called Backup. It was the original Backup. We call it Backup for Files now. It was the original product for eFolder, and it really provided a great foundation at file level backup that really built this company. Along the way, we've made some strategic acquisitions as we saw the marketplace evolve into bigger technological challenges like compliance, security, etc., human resource challenges with mobility, the way that people BYOD when you are working inside the office walls, etc. So we started making acquisitions that really wanted to put together the most powerful suite of data protection solutions available to an IT services provider. And we feel like we've really done that today. It really started with Anchor probably 5-6 years ago. It's File Sync and Share. I almost feel bad calling it File Sync and Share because it is so much more. It's a resource that certainly provides your clients the ability to be mobile, to be productive no matter their environment, but also provide a sense of invincibility around protection. And sometimes, just as important, provides you additional ways, and truly most important, provides the MSP ways to make margin. When you look at file server enablement and some of the other technological advantages that Anchor brings to the table, it's just a Swiss Army knife that can be used in a lot of ways within the MSP solution stack. We also went down the Cloud Finder road. This is a cloud-to-cloud backup solution aimed at Office 365. We're able to give you a retention policy beyond the 60 days that Microsoft gives you, and it backs up email, calendar, and contacts. And then we have some developments coming out here in the first quarter that will bring SharePoint and OneDrive into that equation as well for those backups. On the BDR side, as mentioned, we've got Andrew Benzinger with us today, the founder of Replibit. This is probably one of our key strategic acquisitions over the recent past, bringing Replibit, a chain-free backup BDR solution, into our family. And we're really excited to have Andy in this product working with them. We have appliances, both SSD and hybrid, to be able to support that. And it's just a really strong product that we encourage everyone to look at when considering BDR, along with the fact that leads us right into our most recent acquisition this past summer. We're still working on the integrations of this, but it's Axiom. They have a business recovery cloud product that works complements Replibit in a lot of really nice ways. We're working to bring these technologies together, but right now you can still explore Axiom, see some of the replication and virtualization in the cloud strengths that it has. And we really encourage you to look at both sides of these BDR products, as eventually, as we go through the rest of this year and into 2019, these will become one. So that's wanted to make sure, again, the audience is aware of who we are from a data protection solution. Now let's talk about a little bit about the stars of this show, and it's certainly not myself. Tom, let's start with you. Can you give us a little bit about you? And as you're going through some of your overarching kind of background and things, I'm going to put up a survey for our folks, as we want to know what percentage of clients that our audience is using are under an MSA, an SLA, some sort of actual contracted agreement versus just a break-fix kind of one-time payments. But as people are answering, Tom, can you give us a little bit about you, sir?
Yeah, thanks, Robert. And everyone, if you could answer that poll, that'd be great. We're going to get some statistics here and be able to discuss it as it relates to this book. So we got a slide up of me. Some of you already met me before. And basically, just to let you know about me, I owned an MSP for 15 years in the East Coast, the Washington, D.C. area. I sold it 3 years ago, coming up on 4, and I Got a couple slides there. I got 20 years technical experience. Got some of my degrees up there. During my time off, I actually went to wine school and worked as a sommelier. Got pictures of you in the Grand Canyon. Did all those great things you do after you sell a business. Was out on the road for a long time. But then I got an opportunity. I was called up by my friend Adam Slutskin, the CRO here, and Matt Nachtrup, and they invited me to come in here and do something that I'd never heard of someone doing at a software company. As you know, we only sell within an MSP channel, and they asked me if I wanted to come in and be an advocate for MSP owners and be that voice of the MSP and what they need, not be in sales, but being here to be an asset to MSPs and help them grow their businesses. So I came up with the name MSP Ignition, and we have gone with that, and it is all about you guys and what we can do to better your business. I'm available. You can email me. You can call me. I'll talk to you. You get into our programs. Our book will be available to you through this program, and we're going to teach you how to sell. We're going to teach you how to grow your business. And after that, I guess I'm going to pass it on.
Okay, and just before we get on to the next panel member, Tom, you mentioned some of the tools and resources and things of that nature, and we may have some people who've joined us in the past, but can you touch on maybe one or two of the things that we provided from November and December episodes?
That's really good, too, and we have this available. We did a really interesting first 3 webinars, and the second one, in particular, we had an MSP calculator that was provided by one of our partners. It's white labeled, and Patrick, who's with us, is going to send out an email that makes it available to all of you for download. We also had, in December, we had another webinar, and we made available a 52-page managed service agreement that came from NIMSIS, white labeled, and NIMSIS was owned originally by Matt Nachtrup. You still know that. So we're putting resources out there that you can actually use. I highly recommend getting a hold of those tools because you can probably use them in your practice, or you can see what other people are doing. And I know we always want to see what's behind the curtain, what someone else is doing.
Always.
Thanks, Robert.
Speaking of behind the curtain, thank you, Tom. Andrew Benzinger, you are up next. Would you mind sharing with our audience just a little bit about yourself and maybe what part of the force you sit on?
Yeah, sure. Happy to, and thank you guys for having me. I originally cut my teeth in IT break fix services in the mid to late 90s. I eventually got out of that and started my own ISP. I was co-founder of a very large back-end wholesale provider of services, and we specialized in an area called Radius Proxy, which was downstream authentication. We actually became one of the largest in the world, but we never sold to the public. It was always to larger providers. When I got out of that, I went back to my roots and wanted to get back into break fix. I started a break fix VAR company called Halogen. That eventually evolved into an MSP, and I stayed with that for many, many years until I found an interest in the backup and nearline business continuity space. So I exited my MSP. It's still operational to date. I'm very proud of the guys who took over. They've really expanded, and they're in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. And then I've had the pleasure to work with MSPs for the past 10 or 11 years in helping them grow their businesses and carve out this niche of business continuity within their MSP space and how to make it a part of their book of business and work it into their contracts and SLAs through different products. And my latest one, as you had mentioned previously, was Replibit, which we started about 6 or 7 years ago, built it up pretty rapidly, and then I was fortunate enough to have it acquired by eFolder.
Excellent. Yes, and as mentioned, couldn't be happier to have you being able to call a colleague. So excellent. So obviously you've been an entrepreneurial mindset pretty much your entire life. But just from a point of clarification, forgive me if I missed it. How long? I think you owned more than one, but how long did you own an MSP in aggregate?
I would say it was about 8 years.
Nice. Very nice. Well, thank you for that. Definitely happy to have you today and look forward to maybe once we get into these finer details on what we're going to be publishing around, what your thoughts are. Lastly, I want to introduce Garrison Strickland. Garrison's based out in Nashville, Tennessee. Garrison, would you mind sharing a little bit with our audience about yourself, please, sir?
Sure, thanks. I'm glad to be here. My name is Garrison Strickland, and my MSP background, I started a break fix shop in 2005. And almost accidentally stumbled into the world of MSP about 2007. Really struggled with that decision and what it would look like, how we would implement it. Of course, from 2007 on, we really went through several different iterations of how we would deliver that to our client base. And then in 2015, I sold. And during my time off, I spent some time just with MSPs in general. And really during my entire time as an MSP and after, I've always really enjoyed talking to MSPs, owners. I've been very involved with several of the user groups and PSA communities and things like that, just to try to find out how people are doing things and what we could do to improve those. Along the way, I got really involved with Rockefeller Habits, and I actually started doing Rockefeller Habits consulting for several MSPs and MSP-focused businesses in my time off, which of course is just a natural extension of all of that I'd learned. About a year ago, I had the opportunity to come over to eFolder and was really, really excited to get the chance to come in and work with some of our largest partners to understand how we can implement the solutions that we have, of course, but also just understand how we can help them grow as a business. So I really appreciate being here.
Excellent. Thank you.
But then real quick, I got a really interesting part to that, Garrison. I actually had as a client for my MSP, Vern Harnish.
Did you?
The guy who wrote that book. Yeah. So, connection. The guy who wrote the book. Yeah. So I didn't realize it. At first, I was going over there for like, this is early 2000s. I was going over for like 6 months, and I realized they gave me a copy of the book. I didn't realize he was even doing his work, but awesome. Pretty good stuff. Yeah, I recommend everyone the Rockefeller Habits. It's a really good way to run your business, meetings. Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, it seems like this small world just always seems to get a little bit smaller every day. So, yeah, it's amazing how many connections we all have. So, gentlemen, thank you all very much for giving us your background, letting the folks know exactly that we're not just a bunch of idiots, that we do know what we're talking about here, both beyond the realms of just simply data protection and the critical nature of what we bring to the table, but also from the best practices that we're trying to evolve into being an additional resource to our partners and others who just see the value in what we're doing. With that, let's turn it really focus on the book. I think that's what people came to hear. We've let everyone know kind of what the whole strategies are. So let's talk about the realities of what we're going to be doing throughout the rest of this year. And I think it started, as we already mentioned, back in November and December. Tom, and everyone on the call. So we are going to bring up our next slide. And unfortunately, the software that we're using is not quite as functional as I was hoping for it to be. I was going to make this, we were going to work a little real time here. That's not going to work. So versus keeping these names up on the screen with blank formats, I'm going to turn on our next survey question. And the next survey question dives in specifically into what changes in delivery of IT services do the folks on the call really feel are happening, and what other topics need to be addressed in this book? So essentially, what problems are you seeing in your MSP business? What challenges are you experiencing that you feel like from the MSP Ignition program, it would be great to see content, it would be great to see tools, it would be great to see just the thought leadership and the direction and word format about giving you the abilities to run your businesses better. So Tom, I know up to this point, let me turn the survey on for everyone up to this point. And that's what everyone will see up on their screen. So please, again, give us your feedback. What challenges are you experiencing in your business that you would like to see this team and this book that we're going to be working on address and help in your way? So Tom, we've addressed the contract side of the business up to this point. We've addressed the cost of clients up to this point. I'm sure in some capacity, either as a shared chapter, maybe even broken out, those two topics will be covered in MSP Ignition, the book. But what else do you already have teed up as we go through 2018? And maybe if you've got some very specific questions about a topic or two, or you're straddling the fence, what thoughts or what questions would you like to put out to the audience about direction that they want to see on topics that we cover?
Yeah, I just have I want to go over real quick just a couple of things that are like must-haves that I'm going to put in. I plan on putting in the book, and why. And the first one is that my belief in doing managed services is that you got to have everyone on some kind of agreement, but I don't limit that. And then when I say that is, sometimes people get into this role where they're like, I'm going to do managed services and I'm going to put everyone on an unlimited all-you-can-eat contract. And I go with, instead of that, why don't we make it so we have different options? I only give those contracts to my bigger clients where I can trust them. And then, or I might give them unlimited to start and then cut them back to 10 hours or 20 hours. And then at the same time, If they're not right for a contract, I don't want to give them that. Maybe I just do prepaid hours or something like that. I keep it so, but everyone's on, because the reason why I do that is I want to get paid before I do the work. And I want to have that guarantee, because ultimately cash flow plays into a lot of this, and knowing you're going to get paid rather than the invoicing a lot of people do. They do the work, and then after they've done the work, they take 2-4 weeks to invoice it, and then they got to get paid. My thing is, have everyone on a contract, everyone pays before the work started. The second thing that I just wanted to go over, that's kind of a big issue, and we talk a lot about it here, is bundling. I'm a big believer that you bundle core services together, and this is going to be a chapter of the book, is how do you properly bundle?
So I'm going to stop you right there just for a second, because we're already getting feedback on this exact topic, right? So we've got some questions up there that we'll get into how those panned out here in a little bit. But we have some very specific one-offs coming in. And one question is best ideas for packaging cloud services and traditional MSP services. So it goes right into what you're saying.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Robert. And what I'm saying about that is, if I'm going to do, and I was talking with Andy about this the other day, if I'm going to do an agreement, I'm going to make it so you get hosted exchange. I'm not going to put down on that agreement you get Office 365. I'm going to leave it up to me, because I may decide at some point that Rackspace hosted exchange is better than Office 365. I'm going to put down you get antivirus, not that it's AVG or whatever you're using. If it's file sync, I'm going to leave that up to me, because ultimately you're making the decisions for your clients about what's best for their company, and it also does go hand in hand with what's best for your company. But my thing is bundle. Make the names of what you're providing generic and not specific, so that you are protected and you can put in better technologies that are better for you, better for the client when you need to. And those technologies are not necessarily discussion. They are, this is what I need to run your network effectively and to give you the tools you need. So as I said, just to recap, my 2 big things are going to be everything's on an agreement. Everyone is signed up to some kind of agreement, prepaid, and everything is bundled together into flat pricing, and genericize a little bit just the names of what you're doing, so you do it. But I'm going to go into a lot more depth in the chapters in the book.
Okay. So going back to Paul's question.
Tom.
Yeah.
Oh, Andy's room. Yes.
I'm sorry, guys. This is Andy. Tom, I just wanted to further that notion a little bit. In my opinion, it's critically important that you do have those core services that you kind of hang your hat on. You know, security, AV, backup, BDR, whatever it may be, email services. But to really emphasize what you're saying, Tom, is you have to be very, very careful in your contract to not specify exactly what application you're using. I unfortunately run into scenarios all the time where I'm speaking with an MSP partner who has an application in place for whatever the service they're providing, and it's not meeting their needs. And it's either not meeting their needs because the network has changed, the end user network has changed, the industry has shifted a little bit, or the application just hasn't kept up with the times. And they have to go back to the customer and negotiate a new contract to be able to switch products. And a lot of them, talk with me and say, what do I do here? And to a degree, you're stuck, because they say, if you're going to switch, I'll just use backup as an example. If you want to switch from backup A to backup B, but you've stipulated in the contract you must use backup A, and you've already gone back to this customer on 2 other topics, our partners feel as though they can't go back to them again to renegotiate the contract to change the product, because now you're justifying why your first selection was incorrect and why you're switching to another product.
Wow.
That's great. Thanks for expanding on that.
Yeah, for sure. Garrison, do you have any thoughts as it relates to the whole solution stack, the product selection, maybe even the vendor selection process that you experienced when you were an MSP owner?
Yes, and this really it builds on what Andy and Tom said. Is when we sat down and we determined what our bundles were going to look like and what our offering would look like, we really put on our CEO hat and our CIO hat of the client base that we wanted to have. And so to do that, we had to go through and say, okay, what is our ideal client? Who's a good fit? But then once doing that, we were able to very easily determine, okay, these are the unbranded types of solutions we know they're going to need to see in this environment in order for them to do the number one thing, which is make money. And so we partnered with our clients and said, our goal is to help you make money through the technology solutions we're providing, just like a CIO would. And at that point, you're not having a discussion about, well, should you use AVG or some other antivirus solution. You're having a conversation about, okay, do you need antivirus? Yes, this is obvious. And then that translates straight over into your agreements that you have with them. So now you're actually saying, I'll provide from a big picture perspective these things. And so when you're talking about bundling and how should you include cloud or more traditional MSP services, it almost makes that line go away, because you're looking at the solutions they need as a whole, as a business to succeed. And we just did an exercise internally. We just wrote everything down. We said, okay, we know that this is what they need. And then we went and found the best solutions for that fit into our environment and that our technicians approved and were comfortable with.
Awesome. Appreciate that insight, Garrison. It's interesting the way that you three gentlemen are talking about this. We just closed the survey, and the number one answer that people are looking for insight and information on are really low margin, no margin cloud offerings. And I think the packaging that we just talked about really will hit on that, along with probably a few other topics as well. But interesting that the first thing that we pulled up was certainly the most curious from our audience. I want to transition to the second most popular response, and that's MSSP requirements. Tom, I know that there are a lot of security evolutions in the IT channel today. There's a lot of thoughts about MSP to MSSP, that transition process. What do you feel Ignition has on the forefront as it relates to the topic of MSSPs?
Well, I think we'll certainly delve into that probably later in the year. My main basis right now going forward is just getting down the basics of what every MSP must do. Get a little more specific on the MSSP front, but it definitely will bring someone in, and we'll bring in one of our partners who has a business that is specifically about that. I never really differentiated it in my business. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a core requirement. I dealt with a lot of government contractors, yep. So it was right at the forefront. We did spell out specifically in our agreements how we were going to handle that. I don't know if Andy has anything specific on that, or Garrison.
No, I didn't do any differentiation, to be honest with you, when we were doing it.
And I'm not surprised. I think to be kind of on the forefront, right? The marketplace has evolved, and I think that it continues to evolve, and it continues to maybe even pick up momentum on the rate that things evolve within the IT channel. But one of the keys is that I don't know that MSSP was perhaps a recognized term, or at least on the tip of everyone's tongue, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years ago, as at least as much as it is today. And I'd like to say that one of the things I think I'll recommend to Tom, my buddy Tom here, is the fact that our chief security officer here, Joshua Foltz at eFolder, he really keeps us on the forefront of making sure that we are as impenetrable as possible, if you will. And I think he will bring a lot of value once we start tapping into his kind of his perspective and his expertise as a chief security officer. I have that strategy in my head, but as chief security officer, what that transition is, because he, of course, is pretty familiar with the MSP roles, the evolution that MSSPs are really trying to get to, and the fact that it is an evolution for an MSP to get there, if that's something that they truly want to do, and add that extra S to their title. So really great stuff on the forefront, and looking forward to that. The third most popular answer from our survey was mobile workforce security and availability, coming in at a very close third as far as interest. Tom, what's your thoughts about maybe what Ignition has planned for the mobility, the workforce aspects of what MSPs are dealing with?
Well, yeah, it does bring up a big issue, and it's something we talk about all the time, because you've got people with all different types of devices. And often we've been left in a situation as MSP owners where we have very little control over those devices, where we had a lot of control over what is behind the firewall. Yeah. And it's become almost impossible in most situations to tell people they can't use their own device. So it is an important thing, and I think that comes down to how you put your agreements together and what you say in them from a legal perspective. I don't get too deep into that, but my recommendation would be that you have protections in there that if people are using their own devices and they're out of your control and they have things other than work stuff on them, that now this falls under, that is not really under your control, and if something happens, if there's a loss of data, a breach, something like that, it is not really your fault then. Gotcha. And you need to protect yourselves from that, because someone could say it and then it's impossible to trace actually how the penetration happened or who got a hold of the device. But I don't think you can really go out there anymore like we used to and say everyone's got to use the company BlackBerry. It's not going to work.
Yeah, just BYOD is taking over the world.
And I think we can definitely address some of this, and we will address in the book, how does a managed service provider deal with BYOD.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, this is Andy, and this is a bit of a tangent, but you kept using the word devices. What are your thoughts on, in these agreements, if they should be focused on the user because there are individual devices out there and you're billing per user and moving away from billing per endpoint?
I get more towards, towards the end of my MSP, I wasn't even billing per user or per endpoint. I was billing per network. And I would say if it was a 50 user network, I would say I'll cover this up to 60 people at this price. And then you could buy, and then I would have to go to the next level. But I like to get away from trying to figure that out, because it got so, as you know, Andy, it got so muddled when all these devices started showing up. And then what is a user? And you got part-time people and full-time. And now some people have 7 devices, someone else has 2. So my thing is, it pretty much comes down to when you're evaluating a network and you're going to price it out per month, figuring out what it costs you to run the whole thing per month, and then figuring out what you need to make off of it, and try to move away from that per way of thinking. And that's going to be a big part of what I put into our book. And also that's what, if you go back and look at our webinar from December with Nemesis, you'll find that's really good. They do it that way too. They do not do per user. They do the whole network and they provide everything for it.
Wow. Very nice. Great question, Andy. Any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, when we presented it to the client, we approached it that way, but we also used an internal calculator that was based per user, and we used averages of what our cost per user was across different types of networks. And of course, you've got some clients that are going to be a lot heavier when it comes to their own devices, whether it be phone, tablet. Some clients everybody has 2 laptops, it seems like, and things like that. So we would put that into that calculator. And I think that's a good thing to differentiate, is that there may be a difference between how you arrive at your internal cost and your total, all-in seat price, or whatever price it is for the client, and how you present it to the client. And it can easily get jumbled together, and all of a sudden you go sit with the client, you start to talk to them. Okay, well, per user we're doing this, when really you can strike that part of the conversation with them, even though internally it may be how you arrive at that number.
Awesome. So really, it's really, it seems like every topic somehow leads down to efficiencies and trying to figure out how we can be more efficient.
And thanks for that, Garrison. That was a good point, because yes, you ultimately do want to know what it's costing you to run per user, what it's costing you for remote users, what it's costing you even down to per device. But my thing is, and it sounds like Garrison said on the same page, let's not get into that conversation with the client, because then it doesn't go anywhere. It's like all of a sudden they atrophy a little bit and they want money back.
Yep.
And you don't want to do that.
So Tom, you may have addressed this on your session with the MSP calculator. I don't know if you did or if the audience is the same, but a lot of the tools that we use as MSPs are charged to us, the MSP, from the vendor on a per user, per device basis. How do you convert that into a flat fee network style billing cycle? Or how do you equate?
That was kind of I do it through the calculator, but as you know, and this is where it gets interesting, sometimes you would have networks where you would have people that were using different devices, or 2 people who were sharing a computer, like one that's part-time. So I would calculate it in, I think it sounds like Garrison did it the same way. I would calculate in how many seats I was using or something, and then ultimately I would look at everything in the end total, what it would cost me, and for my service hours and all of that, and I would get that lump number. But I would basically take that lump number. If it was $1,000, I'd be like, okay, if that's $1,000, I need to make $2,000 on this. But I would definitely know what those costs were. So if they went up, I could adjust accordingly. But I tried to move away from it when I actually went to the pricing level.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you for the question, Andrew. And I know we have mentioned in the questions, a few questions have come in. So for those resources that we're referencing from the past, the calculators, the agreements, we'll make sure that the audience here today has access to those resources as well. They are incredible tools, and I think you'll all find some tremendous value there. So we will make sure that those get in your hands and you have the repository for where everything will be housed going forward. We did get a question, a couple of questions on the sales process. It's just another opportunity to reinforce the fact that we'll have a completely a separate track for Ignition. Again, we'll be doing 2 episodes per month, one episode around the best practices as we're talking here today, the other around sales enablement and really being better salespeople. I think that sales enablement piece will definitely touch on both the acquisition of new clients as well as upselling and really maturing your existing clients in the most profitable way fashion. So just as a heads up that there are going to be a completely different webinar topics, and we'll be into those aspects. With that being said, Tom, Garrison, Andrew, we had a question come in just about upselling new or existing services and existing clients. What are your thoughts, maybe just at a high level, upselling the existing clients either on their existing services or getting them to buy more of that solution stack? What's maybe your best approach you experienced when you were owner of an MSP?
Well, it kind of went back to I had different levels. So I ran with my lowest level was prepaid hours. And I usually, there are a lot of clients you don't necessarily want them on contract. You know, just do the hours and be done with it. But I make them prepay it for them. And then I have a level that I was like I had gold, silver, and then my top one was titanium. And generally what I tried to do is get everyone on the top plan that fit within certain demographics. And so that I wouldn't have to move them later. If I needed to change products, for example, give them a BDR, give them a file sync solution, something like that, then, or buy them a new file server, I would try to time that with when the contracts were expiring and have the discussion then. I did not like discussing changes when there were things, but I would account for them in the contract. And if I had to put a new tool in, the problem with that is it does start to get to nickel and dime. Now you're showing them costs. And you're saying this costs much more because I'm giving you this. So I try to stay away from that and do it at contract time whenever possible. But if I did and they needed to do a BDR and I need them to carry some of that price, then I would do it as a multiple, as I stated before. This costs me this much. It costs me this much to manage. What do I need to make off it per month?
Okay. So looking at it from a package perspective, trying to get someone in and obviously kind of just continue to communicate the value of those upper echelons of service.
Trying to keep that at contract time, so then it's not, hey, you need a BDR. It costs you this much more per month. Yep. It's not, because now you shifted that conversation with the client to something where they can start try to get behind the curtain and say, okay, well, if that costs this much, what about this one? We don't need this anymore over here. And you don't ever have that conversation.
Very cool. So that's an interesting. Please, Andrew.
This is Andy. I couldn't agree with Tom more on that. I did everything in my power to never have a cost or technology specific discussion. Everything was about what their business need was. And I would do in all my proposals, I would translate what their need was back to them in a language that they could understand, because they don't necessarily understand technology and they don't even necessarily care the name of the application. Some do, some are just real curious. But if I could translate what their requirement was into solving the business problem that they had and present it in a fashion of, is this going to solve your need? And make it a no-go decision based on the language that they can understand, at a way more success than winding up in a conversation about cost of anything.
Okay, and curious, so thank you for that approach. As it relates to just starting the conversation, what's maybe if you could expand on that, Andrew, a little bit, and Garrison, your perspective as well, how would you go about really kind of initiating those conversations with clients to start trying to upsell them? Either because you had to, because you're seeing more cost, or because you're just wanting the additional revenue?
The most common
Andy.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Garrison. Go ahead.
The most common kind of upsell that we did was a move from we had two basic levels of service, which was one that included everything with remote and you paid for on-site, or included on-site. And so we would have quarterly reviews, and we would go sit down and we would assess whether or not there needed to be an increase or a change. And that was the most common upsell that we did. So it was just from one type of our service to another. But occasionally, when new tools came around, I remember back in the mid-2000s, doing any type of web content management, monitoring, blocking, and things like that. That was always an add-on for us at that point. And eventually, it became a part of our package. So when we would go and we had a new content management software they were selling, we'd go sit down with them, talk to them about the positive benefits, just like Andy, like you were talking about, and make it a business conversation of this is the impact that it's going to have on your business if we're able to do things like block potential viruses, block wasted time, those kinds of things. But eventually, what we did is just increase our monthly cost over time, so that new clients coming in, we're going to pay more. Our existing clients, we're going to see an increase at the end of their contract, and we were just going to include the content management and filtering because it saved us so much time. And so we saw an increase in efficiency if everyone had it. So it went from this is something that you can add on to us understanding that it was saving us so much time that we just needed to include it. Plus, the product became more commoditized, right? It was way more expensive back in the mid-2000s versus today. And I think that you see that over and over again when new things hit and as part of a potential offering. At first, you can sell it as an a la carte piece, but eventually you're going to want to work it into your total package.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you. Andrew, I think you were going to share something as well?
Yeah, I agree with Garrison that, it may start out as a la carte and then you just work it into your basic package. A lot of it boils down to a lot of that cross-sell and upsell opportunity is based on the goodwill that you've generated with the partner over time. So when you're coming into that new customer, let's say that, I'm sure everybody on the call knows this. The first thing, in my opinion, at least, that you want to do and convey to the partner is, we're going to stabilize your network and reduce your pain. Once you've done that, you've established that you are an expert in the area, and you've made them more profitable because they're not spending time dealing with down systems or viruses or whatever it may be. Then, as you're in there over time, you now have the ability and the reputation, the goodwill to go back to that guy and say, look, I've noticed that you guys are spending, we can help your business here. And you talk about the business conversation and you roll it in that direction.
That's good. Thank you, Andrew. I'm sorry, just Tom and I think we're coming to the end. Today, we're actually about 45 minutes in at this point. We knew it'd be a little shorter. Give some folks some time back. We've talked and touched on a lot of great stuff. Just as a quick housekeeping point, a question came in as well. If you have registered for today's event, you will actually have been registered for the series at this point, so you will be continually notified when we get these on calendars. Our next one will be towards the end of this month on January 30th, where we will be touching on, again, the sales aspect, which is what we were just dealing with, upsells, cross-sells, new sales, sales strategies, etc. So that will be the first episode dedicated to sales enablement. And definitely encourage you to come back and join us for that. In February, the lovely day of Love Day, we will be, Valentine's Day, we'll be doing the first chapter and really focusing on why managed services agreements and why everyone being your client, needs to be on one, and really bring forth some critical information as it relates to the agreements and how they fit into your business. Moving forward to the rest of the year, we talked about a lot of great stuff today. Again, contracts are going to be at the forefront, but packaging is also going to be there, really understanding how you incorporate the packaging into your contracts. How do you put these together for your client's consumption? How do you develop your solution stacks and generify that to be, the right levels where you can kind of interplay those and exchange those variables as needed, as well as vendor selection. So really, what do you need to keep on the forefront as it relates to vendors, their suite of solutions? How many things can they bring to the table that you can then monetize? Going to be a lot of really good stuff around that. We touched on security, the transformation to MSSP that some of our IT channel providers are looking to do. That will be explored, as well as mobility, BYOD, the HR side, the general resources side. Just to let you know, kind of bring us back as it relates to kind of what our audience was looking for. Again, the highest response rate was 65% on low margin, no margin solutions. We had 50% coming in looking for the MSSP insights, 46%, almost the same number. Again, that mobility aspect and dealing with clients, the human resources side of the business, 31% on the hardware. With a lot of other questions coming in on the question side of the house. We addressed some of those today, and I really appreciate that feedback. And just in general, folks today on the phone from the audience perspective, thank you for your time joining us for this. Tom, Andrew, Garrison, thank you for bringing your insights not only to today, but as Tom continues to these efforts on bringing these ideas and strategies together. I know you two gentlemen will play a key aspect in making the publishing of this tome a success, and something that will be very valuable to the partners that we've engaged as we go through the year. So thank you, everyone. Tom, I think you have one more thing to say as we close.
Yeah, I just want to close out. I just want to say, this is a wonderful opportunity. Matt Nackstrup came up with this idea of doing a program like this and bringing someone in.
And for those that don't know, Matt's
our CEO, bringing someone in that was from the MSP community and providing a resource. And I'm a resource for you here to help you grow and help you better your business. And that's not only for partners. I mean, partner or not with us, we of course would like you to be a partner, but if you're not, you're still welcome to come in here, chime in, shoot me an email, ask me a question, and join us on our sales on January 30th. We've got someone from a private equity firm that we work with, and he's an expert in sales enablement, and he's going to help us. His name's Scott Kaplan, and he and I are going to put on a little sales training. We'll do some back and forth, and we'll have some takeaways from that too, like some sales pointer cards that you can take with you.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Andrew, Garrison, any parting thoughts from you guys? I think you guys muted. I think they took me.
I'm here. Yeah, I just want to thank you for inviting me. Hopefully some of this information was helpful. I'm really interested to see how this book progresses. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We just covered one or two topics at the very highest level, and over time we're going to see this really progress with the feedback of our partners or the attendees of how this is going to hone in and really help your business. So please stick with us. I think this is really going to turn into something great.
Yeah, exciting stuff. It's fun to be a part of. All right. With that, everyone, have a great rest of your hump day, and we look forward to catching you on the next episode of MSP Ignition. See y'all.
Thanks.